I'm Pete Rizzo, editor at Bitcoin Magazine. We're here at the Bitcoin Magazine live desk presented by Marathon. It's Industry Day at Bitcoin 2023 here in Miami, Florida. I'm joined once again by some very special guests. To my left, Mr. Michael Saylor, CEO of MicroStrategy, Walker America, one half of the crypto couple on social media, your favorite social media apps. And then last but not least, Swann, host of Bitcoin Audible. So it's been a whirlwind morning. We've heard about a lot of different subjects, from the Lightning Network to regulation in Washington to what's going on with the building in the space and through this crypto winter. So we're going to go through some highlights and bring you the best. Wanted to start off with that regulatory piece. Of course, a lot of excitement at this conference for what will be history. We will see a presidential candidate make his debut at a Bitcoin conference for the first time. That is Robert F. Kennedy Jr. will be speaking later this week. We're going to see candidates from both sides of the aisle appear. We'll also have Vivek Ramaswamy on the Republican side. Interested to talk about regulation and where we're at, what's going on in Washington. Guy, I know you watched those panels. What's your take on what you're seeing in Washington right now?
Well, I think it's largely driven by the fact that because Bitcoin in particular, like, we're looking at such a global system that is kind of a extreme sort of neutrality, is that we're having to come to terms with the fact that the permission closed structure just isn't going to work anymore. And I think we have to essentially wake up to the new reality. It's very similar to what has happened in the internet, and we can fight it as much as we want. You know, you can try to fight the ocean wave, but you're just not going to compete with the ocean. Like, there is an avalanche of movement that is happening on every level and in every direction at the same time. And I think if we don't, we should surf the wave. You know, it's a whole lot more fun to surf the wave than fight the ocean.
So you're saying it's inevitable, this is a change that's happening, but we're hearing some really strong opposition. We heard from their regulatory panel that Elizabeth Warren marshaling the forces, trying to actively pass legislation. Walker, interested on your take?
Well, I think that politicians inherently must think in short-term cycles. They are inherently high time preference individuals because that's the nature of politics. You're always thinking about the next election cycle, the next campaign. You are thinking in the short term because you must, because if you don't get reelected, none of it matters, right? So they're not really out there looking for solutions. They're not, when they're pushing any particular agenda, there's a reason for it. You can follow the money and figure out why they're pushing that. But they're looking for a way to boost themselves, boost their standing, become some sort of standout hero or anti-hero that is going to energize their voter base. But they're not actually thinking about ways to find solutions. Because if they were, why are they following China's lead from a policy perspective instead of doing what America does best, which is encouraging innovation, encouraging, you know, things like the internet, as Guy said. Paradigm-shifting technologies like Bitcoin is, they should be trying to foster that innovation, not trying to stifle it.
Well, it sounds like you're going to be skeptical of some of these candidates who are getting on stage. Michael, interested how you're going to be watching this content and these keynotes as they occur.
I mean, I think the political interest is very auspicious. I mean, the tagline is Bitcoin is rising, and the clarity is coming to the market, and the clarity is that Bitcoin is the dominant digital commodity. We've now got an asset class that has emerged for the first time in 100 years, and that asset has been endorsed by senators, by governors, by mayors, by the White House, by the head of the SEC, by the head of the CFTC, by the head of the Treasury, by central bankers, and now we've got it being endorsed by presidential candidates. And tell me the second best asset that's ever been endorsed by all those people.
Right.
None. Right? So the real story here is of regulation is the regulators are regulating everything else called crypto, and the regulators are endorsing the thing Bitcoin.
But I guess to Walker's point, you know, the skepticism around politics, you know, people, whether their motivations are correct and pure, do we think that Bitcoin will become a presidential issue? Because right now we're in the primaries, early stages. These are outsider candidates. You know, somebody is going to be nominated to potentially counter Joe Biden, current U.S. president. What can be done here? Guy, your take.
Yeah, on the note that they're outsider candidates, so was Trump. And I think it's a failure to recognize that the mainstream has lost the legitimacy that it has, like it's a very important consideration to be like, oh, well, it's like CNN doesn't support it and Fox doesn't support it and blah, blah, blah. It's like, well, Joe Rogan's got the largest media show on the planet, not them.
Right.
But there's still this Overton window that the old world is still in charge and the old mindset is still in charge. I think the clock is out on that. Like the time is running out and the sands are shifting out from underneath them. I do think we are talking about very legitimate candidates.
Okay.
And in fact, I think trying to pretend they aren't is just showing how unbelievably disconnected from the new reality the mainstream is. And to Walker's point about like they are by default high time preference, they benefit massively from backing up or kind of giving that surge of confirmation bias well over the value of actually providing us a meaningful solution to anything. But the thing is the world is still changing, clearly. Technology has just changed the entire sphere.
I think it's also a time where we could benefit from some regulatory support. We heard today about the turf wars between the SEC and the CFTC about Bitcoin and crypto regulation and how that's going to be delineated. Something we haven't talked about is mining, helping the energy grids but still being kind of locked out of the system by regulators in New York and elsewhere. So I think for the first time, it seems like we as Bitcoiners, we have demands for Washington. Michael, I'm interested in your take.
I think Bitcoin miners are going to fight the political battles for Bitcoin on the front line. They always have. They always will. That's why it's important that we have a very strong network of Bitcoin miners. I think that the squabbling between the interagencies, the CFTC and the SEC, is much ado about nothing. They both like Bitcoin.
So what would it take for you to maybe even come out and endorse one of these candidates? Is that something you as a Bitcoiner would ever think about?
I think it's too soon to figure out how the election's going to work out, but I do think that the upcoming election will be a massive marketing event for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Agree.
Walker?
Yeah, that's a good,
Well, I think to your earlier point, Pete, about how does Bitcoin actually become a topic in this next election? Money is always a topic in politics, and Bitcoin is just money.
It's money, yeah.
It's just money. It happens to be the best money. There is no second best. But it's money. And in Washington especially, money talks, right? And we have currently a system where money begets power, and that's always going to be the case. But in our current system also, power begets money, right? Proximity to the creation of that money begets even more power. It is a bit of a scary thing, I'm sure, for many of these politicians to look at this new monetary system and say, it doesn't matter how close I am to this thing. I can't get close enough to change it. So
well, you could argue they are at least succeeding in some ways in pushing some of the industry offshore. We've seen many of the major exchanges move, or at least signaling that they might consider that. Guy, I'm interested in your take on just the movement of progress outside the United States.
I don't worry about what the United States does to Bitcoin or the Bitcoin ecosystem or the Bitcoin market. I worry what the United States does to the United States in regards to that. I really don't want to leave, but the selling point of El Salvador is looking really, really good, especially when North Carolina in particular is kind of is pushing back. You know what I mean? It's like at some point, they're service providers. They're meant to be service providers. They don't behave like them, they don't act like them, and they don't think like service providers, but they are. And I think in a more globally connected world where information and, more importantly, money, which is one of the last vestiges of the digital sphere that keeps this highly permissioned and closed model that actually is antithetical to the way technology now works. As that opens up, I think the United States political apparatus and them not being regulatory, friendly in a regulatory sense, is way worse for the United States than it is for Bitcoin.
Well, something that we haven't talked about is how much more permissioned the system could get. We saw a presumptive Republican hopeful Ron DeSantis coming out against the CBDC, against a digital dollar. Walker, I'm interested in your take. What are you looking at when you're seeing a candidate come out? Are you worried that we could see this type of system rolled out in the United States?
I'm quite sure that they will try, but I think they also have a lot on their plate right now, trying to deal with the, let's say, crumbling banking sector. In terms of CBDCs versus Bitcoin, I think that it's going to become very obvious that while Bitcoin is not a partisan issue, neither are CBDCs. They shouldn't be. It will quickly become apparent to people on both sides of the political aisle that whether you believe you should be able to anonymously buy a gun or anonymously pay for an abortion, a CBDC is not going to allow either of those things to happen. So I think that as much as Bitcoin is a unifying factor, let's say charging towards something, a CBDC will also be a unifying factor when it comes to running away from something, and that something is totalitarianism.
So, Michael, is this the election issue? Is it Bitcoin versus the digital dollar, a CBDC?
No, I think all the politicians are going to compete to see who likes Bitcoin more. Bitcoin is freedom. Anybody that runs for office in the United States is going to run on a platform of freedom. And that being the case, when you have millions and millions of people that believe in Bitcoin and believe in freedom, I think you're going to see Republican politicians point out that they're more pro-Bitcoin than Democrats. And I think you're going to see Democratic politicians point out that, no, they're more pro-Bitcoin.
But there is a competition to be anti-Bitcoin, right? Isn't that what we've seen from Elizabeth Warren? It's both sides are getting more polarized, Guy?
Well, there's an element of, like, politics benefits from controversy. Politics is the health of the state is the controversy and the hate and the violence of the people. Like, war is the health of the state. The more permanent issues they can bring into the political sphere, the more it appears as if we need them. Like, that's why the Constitution had it structured so that the larger, most distant political apparatus had the absolute tiniest restricted set of goals or set of responsibilities as they could possibly have. Guns were never supposed to be part of the conversation because there's a permanent impasse. We're never going to solve that argument. So the more they can get us arguing and decide that it's just which 51% is going to force what on the other 49, well, then we have to watch this giant game show. And we have to participate in distributing the trillions of dollars of stolen and counterfeit funds, even though we know it's a reality show that's just an absolute joke. But you feel obligated to participate because you're being forced to pay for it. And so the more controversy there is, the more people pay attention to it, the better their ratings are, and the better their power is. So in that vein, Bitcoin is a very controversial topic in a newly controversial field of finance and banking because, well, the old system, all the cracks are coming to the surface and the insolvency is basically running to the end of its line. And so, yes, I suspect there will be louder voices for Bitcoin and louder voices against Bitcoin increasingly going forward.
Well, I want to flip the script a little bit. In the second half of this day's session, we're going to hear a lot about what happened. That's the theme. So, you still have this veneer of FTX, SBF, Sam Bankman-Fried, and the things that happened. I think a lot of people who are tuning in maybe for the first, time, check Bitcoin regularly once at the conference, they're wondering, what has happened here for us to kind of clean up what happened? How are we moving forward? Michael, I'm interested in your take.
In the past 12 months, there's been a crackdown on crypto, so I think that the crypto star is falling. Crypto exchanges are under pressure. Cryptocurrencies in the form of stable coins are under pressure. Crypto securities and crypto tokens are under pressure. Crypto DeFi exchanges are under pressure. But at the same time, the Bitcoin star is rising. Bitcoin has been more legitimized by every agency. The regulatory clarity of Bitcoin has become greater, distinguished vis-a-vis every other crypto. The action of regulators in order to distinguish Bitcoin from crypto has been emboldened. They've taken the gloves off, and they're pursuing all of the substitutes for Bitcoin in the crypto ecosystem, and they're engaging in an educational exercise to educate the entire world that Bitcoin is not crypto. So the last 12 months, I think, have been good for Bitcoin, have been hard for crypto, and now, if you don't understand the difference, right, you're not reading the news.
But what do we do to get the people who are burned by the cryptocurrency industry into the Bitcoin tent, right? And this is a question I really would enthusiastically ask
Don't you think Sam did that for us?
I don't know. Do you think that he did it for us? Because I don't know that if we want a lot of those customers over.
If you're tired of getting rugged, try Bitcoin.
But do you really think somebody who had their money in FTX, lost that money, do you really think they went out and bought Bitcoin after that? A serious question.
I think everybody that trusted a crypto custodian or a crypto exchange or a crypto token more than Bitcoin lost their money. And I think everyone that loaned their Bitcoin out to somebody else to rehypothecate or short lost their money. And the people that still have their money are the people that own Bitcoin and held onto their Bitcoin.
Yeah. I think I see a lot of people personally, like, messages and stuff that I get. Every single time we go through one of these cycles and we have this crypto blow up, there is an entirely new, maybe it's only 5%, maybe it's a very small portion of people who just got burned in crypto. But honestly, the failure of crypto is the constant funnel of people understanding why Bitcoin is fundamentally the only thing that matters.
But it seems like we're on a path for some of these things that were built on other cryptocurrencies to come back to Bitcoin. We heard today about stablecoins on Lightning. There's going to be talks tomorrow on NFTs coming to the Bitcoin network. So are these things going to become more commingled in the future, Walker?
Well, I think that's a natural, let's say, centralized, decentralized process. Obviously, we have more and more interest coming toward Bitcoin from people who previously were looking for get-rich-quick schemes and are probably still looking for get-rich-quick schemes. However, there are a number of use cases that go far outside of the initial mania, the initial speculative fervor that you may see around Ordinals that I think have a lot more potential. And, whether you want to trade your Pepe coin or whatever it is, the new meme coin du jour on Bitcoin, okay, if the protocol allows that, we shouldn't be totalitarians that try to stop it. That being said, it's also an opportunity to educate about why Bitcoin, and I'm talking about Bitcoin, is still, well, as Michael would say, there is no second best. And it's an opportunity to educate, because just because something is put on Bitcoin, just because a JPEG is uploaded to Bitcoin, does not mean you're not going to get rugged. It just means that you have a slightly more secure way that you might get rugged. But, and I know Michael has some thoughts on this, there are a lot more implications to ordinals and inscriptions than just the JPEG fervor.
Michael, obviously you're building on Lightning. You're seeing these worlds maybe come closer together. Your take?
I think there's a consistent flow of capital from the crypto ecosystem into the Bitcoin ecosystem as people lose confidence in crypto exchanges and crypto networks. They gain confidence relatively in Bitcoin. And I think there's a consistent flow of development activity and innovation moving from the crypto ecosystem to Bitcoin. A lot of these ideas were tried with shortcuts in the crypto ecosystem first. And now, after 4 or 5 years, and knowing that they built on a weak foundation, people are coming back and they're rethinking layer 2, layer 3 applications with a stronger, more economically sound, technically sound foundation.
But do you think we should be doing more to specifically court some of that building that's going on?
I don't think you have to. I think it's going to happen inevitably. I think that the Lightning ecosystem took years to gestate, and now it's coming into its own because it's compelling technology. I think that's getting the attention of Silicon Valley venture capitalists. It's also getting the attention of big tech companies like Block. And I think, and companies like MicroStrategy. And I think that anybody that wants to inscribe anything, anybody that wants to timestamp, hash stamp, create a fungible token, create a non-fungible token, or find an immutable shared ledger is staring at Bitcoin saying, this is the commodity, this is the asset without the issuer, this is the one network that the regulators aren't going to shut down.
And I think that's a huge catalyst. That Bitcoin is the preferred money, or I think we're looking at now what happens if Bitcoin becomes the preferred platform. But again, I think a lot of people, there's a lot of anger about this issue right now, and there is a culture clash, Guy.
100%. So, there's a little bit of a kind of providence in the fact that this conversation has been going on for 10 years about the fact that anything that can be built on crypto that's actually useful in any certain sense.
But I think with Ordinals, this was the first time that a whole new generation really felt that was possible.
Sure. But
we shouldn't underestimate that.
It's funny too from an engineering standpoint, BRC20 tokens and inscriptions are the dumbest possible way to use signature space, because it's got nothing to do with Bitcoin consensus. I mean, it's literally the analogy that I have is particularly for the cost that it puts on nodes. I think there's an argument to be made that it's an attack in a sense to what the computational and the validation cost of Bitcoin is when it's a monetary system, and that it's about securing monetary integrity. Is that it's like putting in pointless data that isn't really designed around that task. There's a reason why you can't just literally take a JPEG and stick it on chain. It needs to be a valid transaction with a hash and a signature and a key. You know, like everything is about creating monetary integrity. So in that sense, there is an engineering standpoint of like it's not a storage system. Like it's not about data. But what I liken it to, and the guy's take that I had recently, I think the analogy is really great, is that this is a public resource that we are all using, and to put a pointless cost that is not attached to the consensus or the integrity of the system itself and what its purpose is like going to a public space, like going to a public park and taking a dump. Like yes, you can do it. Yes, somebody else is going to have to clean it up. No, it doesn't destroy the park. It's not that big of a deal. Fees are actually pretty great.
But we're seeing there's a lot of positive externalities of this, right? Block space that wasn't getting used is now getting filled. Fees are going up. Lightning adoption
like I said,
potentially could benefit from this. So why do you use such a, I guess, coarse analogy when describing some of this activity?
Because, again, it's not, like, Bitcoin isn't even the value of some, like, shitcoin or meme coin. I mean, like, there's dick butts. There's dick butts stamped into the chain. It's not like my node went down. Like, it's not, it's really
Are you running or disrespectors, or are you storing the chain? Okay.
No, I don't think so. Like, I think it's been made into more of an issue than it legitimately is. But I think there's a reasonable argument or stance to be made that it's a waste of computational resources for something that is endlessly valuable from the context of like a high monetary integrity that we cannot get in any other way. But at the end of the day, like, it's not that big of a deal. It's just kind of it's stupid. It's like pooping in the park. Like it's just kind of a waste.
But is there a worry here that it might take away from some economically meaningful transactions, like Lightning Network channel opening close, for example? Michael, I'm interested. You're building actively now on the Lightning Network. What has been your experience there with what's going on with the chain congestion?
I think Lightning is pretty important to the scaling of Bitcoin, and I think one day Lightning will be that open protocol that allows hundreds of thousands of companies to serve billions and billions of people and provide billions of transactions a day. So it's important, but I also think that there will be 100,000 applications, layer 3, layer 2 applications and protocols and experiments, and you're going to have people try every type of open protocol and every type of proprietary application. Most of them will fail. Most of them will be stupid. And someone will invent something that will be extraordinary and groundbreaking.
But where do we delineate that? Because we've said for years that most of these things were going to zero. We've had more an adversarial mindset towards these companies. But some of these markets, it seems like, are real. Or are we disagreeing with that? Right? Where do we draw the line?
Oh, well, I'll actually take something here. Is when we talk about, like, there is a very positive externality to the BRC token and inscription thing. And what that externality, again, I think this is the least efficient, kind of dumbest way to even implement it. But
do you think the people who are building on that, do you think they understand that? They just don't have any context.
I think it's just hype and like extremely high time preference. Like just the exciting thing in crypto right now is the fact that we can do it on Bitcoin.
Right.
You know?
Two things can be true at once, though, right? Like, now we can agree that dick butts or whatever they may be, just a ridiculous word, that can be really silly, right? And there can be a lot of cash grabs going on utilizing this technology. Like, humans are always going to find a way to try to enrich themselves to the detriment of others, no matter how pure the base layer is, correct? Now, that can be true, but it can also be true that having proof of publication at a certain time, as Julian Assange said back in 2014.
Hey, this cover is inscribed in the blockchain. It's a 4 megabyte block.
He said Bitcoin is a tool that can guarantee proof of publication at a certain time. He was looking at that as a journalist who has been jailed for what he published. Now, if you're going to tell
the Genesis block.
Yeah, exactly. If you're going to tell me that every inscription is a waste, I'll disagree. If you're going to say that some, but also, who am I to say what is valuable to somebody?
Yeah. But we've had an antagonistic approach to this side of the industry, and I think we have been adversarial towards Silicon Valley. Is this an opportunity to change that narrative? Do we want to repair that relationship?
We can take a different view. We can say Bitcoin is the most secure database in the world, and then we can say Bitcoin is the most secure network in the world. And if you have a more secure database or a more secure network, nominate that one. But I actually think that this is the only database in the world that is reasonably nation-state resistant to attack, and 350 exahash makes it reasonable that no nation-state can interrupt your message or distort it. So will there be an application for the world's most secure cyber network or cyber database? I think there will. The obvious application is to store your money for 100 years.
Yeah.
That's the obvious one, but if I wanted to write a contract like a will that bequeaths billions and billions of dollars, I might want to hash the will, and announce to the world, this is my will, this is the hash key, and tell my heirs. In 37 years, when the lawyer pulls the will out of the safe and tells you you didn't get anything, ask for the hash and make sure the hash meets this one. And so I think there will be ethically sound, economically sound applications. If I wanted to send $10 billion of gold in the middle of a war, I need an Air Force or a Navy to do it. It's very expensive. But if I wanted to send $10 billion of Bitcoin in a war, I would feel comfortable because it is a nation-state resistant network. Well, what if I just wanted to send an order to like drop $10 billion worth of bombs in the war, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I might want to encrypt that message. So I don't know what will happen. We'll see. But I do think it's not really a good use of our time to criticize the 100,000 stupid ideas. I think it's a good use of our time just to note that if the free market's able to invent new things, it will engage the free market, and they will be our friend. And we may as well say governments, corporations, venture capitalists, developers can do something with us instead of saying, we have nothing for any of you, leave us alone.
Well, I wanted to stick with the Silicon Valley thing for a second because, it's my experience being a journalist in this industry for 10 years. Silicon Valley really raised a lot of its capital on the crypto asset thesis. This idea that Bitcoin was just digital gold. It could not do all the things. Therefore, we need the Ethereums. We need the Solanas. We need the Polkadots. I think that thesis is now showing serious cracks. And if you're a crypto hedge fund, if you're a VC with massive long exposure to now these poor foundations, I think you're going to be looking at Bitcoin. And I question the attitude we should have towards this because I think it's a tremendous opportunity.
It's already happening right now. We already see that Bitcoin application developers and the Lightning community and even these ordinal inscription developers, they're pulling venture capital into the Bitcoin ecosystem, and before it was in the crypto ecosystem.
Right.
To Michael's point, let the free market do what the free market will do. We're not smarter than the free market. And if we try to, be our own regulators and control everything, and try to then make further changes to Bitcoin that will prohibit these sorts of things from happening, that opens up more security vulnerabilities, and that makes us no better than the people that we're trying to ostensibly replace.
I would say it's okay to criticize all the stupid things. Just don't censor.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well said.
Like, you don't have to endorse it. You don't have to like it. You can even say how dumb it is. If it's unethical, you should be vocal about it.
Well, there are going to be scams. There are going to be things. You mentioned BRC-20, very poorly designed. So what do we do about it if it's a free market? There's
going to be 100 more versions of it after this one, and maybe someone will get it right on the next one.
Taproot assets, man. This is why I'm bullish on Taproot assets, because the one thing that the value that you can actually get from inscribing or from putting the hash into the chain itself is the fact that you're using it like a clock. You're using it as a consensus as to what the official history of a thing is. So there's a great piece written way back in 2013 by Grisha that proof of work is a decentralized clock. It's a mechanism to make sure that we are all on the same canonical truth, and therefore you can actually cooperate according to that as our totem. And in that way, the idea of stamping in enormous amounts of data, like an actual image, is stupid. But the idea that maybe I have a document with a hash, that's actually an incredibly useful function. And in that same way, Taproot assets, it takes 3 transactions, and you're, filling up block space. You got $10 a
Sorry, what was the progress with Taproot assets recently? Are they live now on Lightning?
It's on testnet, and they're building out the means to actually send these assets over Lightning. So they're using Bitcoin liquidity and Bitcoin settlement in order to facilitate, whatever this other asset is. But the thing is it's actually a good steward. It's actually being a good steward and an efficient use of block space. You can send an unbounded number of Taproot asset transactions in a single transaction on chain so that you're just paying one fee.
So
Whereas
they don't-
BRC20 tokens takes 3 transactions to send one shitcoin from one person to another.
So they're not competing with the liquidity in the Lightning Network. You know, I know recently there's 73,000 channels, 150 million in liquidity. So the use cases you're talking about are not, that won't reduce the ability for Lightning to be used as a payment network at all.
No, actually it will benefit from it greatly. It shows the value of Lightning as a settlement network specifically because you're using, like, money is a liquidity game. Like, it's all just a winner-take-all liquidity competition. And the most liquid money is the one that wins in the end. Lightning is a instant, frictionless value settlement network. What you do with, like, Taproot assets, if you're trying to send, like, the Taproot US dollar or whatever it is you just have the edge nodes convert from one asset to another. And in the middle, you just move the amount of sats that's equivalent to it during that one instant, and you convert it back into the asset at the other end. So Lightning, Bitcoin basically becomes, the value on the Lightning Network basically becomes the global, completely neutral settlement asset. This is the birth and the spread of the medium of exchange phase of the technology. That ultimately at the end we get to the unit of account, but this is the next 10 to 15 years, I think, on Bitcoin, is that it will make all other permissioned money finally work good. It will become the thing that moves value all around the world until it gets to the point where the liquidity on Bitcoin, just from that it has the largest market with every other currency, with every other good in all of society. You put this out 12 years, that it just becomes silly to have your unit of account in your national currency, and then we enter the last stage.
Winding down a little bit on time, Michael, your take?
I think Bitcoin is a worldwide cyber economy, perhaps the first and the greatest of the cyber economies, and you have millions of people, you know, engaged in millions of experiments, and you'll go through iterations 1, 2, 3, and 4. The irrational ones will fall away. Some good ones will get stepped on by regulators. Others will survive, and they'll define the economy. But as an Austrian economist would say, the way you grow the economy the fastest is you provide clear rules, no rulers. If you're in the rules, you don't censor people, and then you let things rise or fall on their own merits. And I'm not going to second guess what 8 billion people will think 40 years from now. I don't even think we can conceive. I think there'll be competitors to everything we see today, and something will happen that we cannot conceptualize. But I'm sure that free people working with rational natural rules and natural law will maximize the outcome for all of us.
Final thoughts, what are you most excited about? Of course, we've got 2 more days of conference ahead here at Bitcoin 2023. Guy?
Oh, man. Just getting to see everybody.
Are you going to ride the bull?
No.
You win.
No,
Wait,
do I get to win something?
You win 1 Bitcoin if you're the person who stays on the longest.
I might ride the bull.
Yeah, it might be worth riding the bull. Walker, what are you looking forward to?
Besides watching Guy ride the bull, emceeing tomorrow with my lovely wife, Carla, and getting a chance to meet some interesting characters backstage.
And we look forward to seeing your outfits. Michael, final thoughts?
I'm looking forward to a lot of high bandwidth conversations with the cyber hornets that I've never met in the real world.
Awesome. Once again, thanks for joining and tuning in. You can smash that like button and subscribe button over on YouTube. Keep giving us a rumble on Rumble if you're on that platform as well. We'll be right back with the second half of today's programming. What happened? FTX and the collapse, and what's next for Bitcoin? Stay tuned.